rock and roll at that point was like very kind of a blue jean, you know, drum solo kind of a situation.
It was like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, you know, Elton John.
You know, Supertramp, Jethro Tull.
You don't have to be able to play the bass like. I mean, rock and roll is not jazz or classical music. It's rock and roll. It rocks and it rolls.
By the early 70s, rock and roll seemed to have been drained of excitement. A new injection of energy was needed, and it came from a small Skid Row bar in downtown Manhattan that was to become one of the most famous clubs in the world, CBGB's. The groups that made their names there added a new one to the rock lexicon, punk. But the new music didn't emerge fully formed. Its roots went deep into the 60s New York underground of pop art, experimental cinema, and avant-garde theatre. At its centre, the fairy godfather of trash, Andy Warhol.
You don't have to do anything.
But Warhol was growing tired of his creation.
In 1970, Andy started to become more involved in the Bianca Jaggers and the Jackie Onassis of the world and moved on to that type of scene. And so a lot of the underground superstars are sort of like out there left floundering, the ones that were still alive.
The newly redundant superstars, along with assorted underground characters, began to gravitate towards an area of the Warhol universe that had been unpopulated since the late 60s, rock music. One graduate of avant-garde theatre became the lead singer of the most important New York band since the Velvet Underground, the New York Dolls. They arrived on the scene when there wasn't a scene.
There weren't really any clubs to play in. We would go around and try to get people to let us play in their bar, but they weren't accustomed to having music. So there was really no place to play in those days.
The first important venue for original bands was opened in 1972, the Mercer Arts Center. Dolls quickly made it the focus of the new underground.
I mean, the word went like wildfire through the scene about the Dolls. It took less than a year for those guys to land a record deal because it was so hot.
We wanted to kind of put that kind of Little Richard flashback into it. We would find stuff that was really funny, like old Courage stuff from like 10 years before. And then like we would buy shoes at the Nun store on Delancey Street. They're kind of like men's shoes, but they got like a Cuban heel on them, but they're for nuns. You know, it was like the dawn of like the feminist movement, and it was the dawn of the gay rights movement. So it all just kind of like merged into one kind of cauldron of polymorphous pansexuality. We started playing at the 82 Club, which was this old-fashioned drag bar. And there was these two old dykes who ran the place. And the one behind the bar's name was Butch, and she talked through one of these voice box things. Hey, you know, those squawk box things. So we were on stage singing and playing. We looked like a bunch of Puerto Rican sluts at this point, you know. I mean, drag, but we looked like, you know, we could slit your throat kind of drag. And we're playing the first song, and I can see Butch, and she's going like, rah, rah, rah. I can hear this squawk coming out of a box, but I can't hear what she's saying. So when the song ended, I like leaned over. She was tending bar, and I leaned over and said, "What did you say?" And she said, "I always said you're a faggot."
Another Mercer Arts Center regular was Wayne, now Jane County. A refugee from the Georgia Bible Belt, she was a star of the bourgeois-baiting ridiculous theater.
I had done underground plays, but I wanted to do it with music, so I had music in my bones. Rock and roll has always been in my bones anyway. So I knew that it would be really an incredible thing to combine ridiculous theater antics with rock and roll music to create this whole shock theater.
You make me clean in my head. You make me clean in my head. Every time I pass you by, can't you see the gleam in my eye?
It was taking sexuality to the extreme so far that it didn't shock anymore. I had a song called Dead Hot Mama, which was about, where I made love to a silver mannequin in a casket. I mean, now it seems tacky, but back then it was quite radical. People loved it. I had a toilet. I had a song called Shit, and at the end, I would dip down into the toilet and bring out Alpo dog food. And people actually thought it was real shit. It was not. It was dog food. I mean, even I'm not that warped, you know. So, and I would throw the dog food at the people, and I would eat it, and I'd roll around in the toilet. And people would, the reactions were like incredible.
Holly Woodlawn's Pure Garbage began life as a backing duo. Holly, who came from Miami, FLA, to star in Lou Reed's Walk on the Wild Side and Warhol's Trash, and Elder Gentile. When the band they were backing folded, they were the band.
We actually got a gig at Reno Sweeney's, which was a cabaret club. And we brought the band in there, and we did it and packed the place, and people were screaming and jumping up and down on the tables. So I said, oh, this is cool.
An acquaintance of Elder's who caught the show was the veteran of several 60s folk rock bands, now working as a Warhol hangout waitress, Debbie Harry.
I called her up, and she said, oh, the band broke up. So I said, well, let's start another one. So I went over, and we started forming Stilettos.
My concept of the Stilettos was to be kind of like a True Confessions magazine story, but only modern, to reflect a lot of the sexual revolution in the music and to show three women up there who were free of the bonds and chains of, you know, the classic concept of what a woman should be in society.
The next important member, guitarist Chris Stein, was borrowed from the Magic Tramps, a band fronted by Elder Gentile's boyfriend, ex-Warhol superstar Eric Emerson.
Chris came very willingly because he was crazy about Debbie. I mean, he was so crazy about her, he didn't know which way to turn, you know. He would, like, even get shy and flushed when he'd be in her presence sometimes.
I saw Debbie and fell madly in love with her immediately, and that was it. I just was going with the flow, as they say, and I liked what they were doing. But a girl trio with supposedly 3 lead singers is not the easiest thing to maintain. So eventually it just sort of crumbled up.
We really did do some very wonderful things. We never made any money, and we never got signed or anything like that, but who knows? I mean, the scene was a different thing then.
Patti Smith had already established a considerable underground reputation as a poet, playwright and actress when she met music journalist Lenny Kaye.
The first time I saw Patti was at a Jackie Curtis play over at the La Mama Theater. And she was playing a kind of speed freak, Keith Richards look-alike. And I was just taken with her. I was taken with her style. I thought she was beautiful. She was like my ideal gal. She knew I played guitar around and stuff, and she said, you know, well, why don't you play guitar behind a couple of these things?
16 and time to pay off. I get this job in a piss factory inspecting pipe.
Yeah, it wasn't like, well, hey, let's combine rock and poetry. It was a one-shot art event that was never even meant to be repeated. And it wasn't for another 2.5 years.
Yeah.